The negotiations over education reform in Connecticut are leaving some in and some out. We're going to talk to leaders of Connecticut's charter schools about staying in the conversation. We'll also try to get to the heart of the Supreme Court considerations of Obamacare. What are the issues and the arguments? And we'll wrap up the week from Connecticut's capital and from D.C., how lawmakers are making news and what they're working on that could affect you, your wallet, and your community. Hi, you're watching The Real Story. I'm Lori Perez. Governor Malloy continues across the state hosting his town hall meetings on education. But meanwhile, at least in the open, it's been pretty quiet on education reform in the Capitol, and there are only a few more weeks in the session. Governor Malloy had proposed increasing funding for charters in his education reform package this year. The bill that emerged from the committee, though, calls for cutting back significantly on the governor's proposed increases for charter school funding. It would also get rid of the requirement that school districts pay $1,000 for each child attending a charter school, making such payment voluntary. Joining me now to keep the conversation about it all going are Liz Cox, she's the school director of Common Ground High School in New Haven, and Taryn Perry, a Jumoke Academy parent and a board member. Thanks, both of you, for being here.
Thank you.
I guess if we could start off with, what don't you think people get about charter schools?
I think a lot of people really don't understand that charter schools are public schools, and they are held to the same accountability standards, state and federal, as other public schools.
So why do you think you get kind of the pushback from people when something like this comes up and you're seeking fair funding?
I think it has to do with funding. It's about the money and how charters are paid. The pushback right now is that the governor has proposed increased state funding for on a per pupil basis, and that districts share in the responsibility of paying for charter school funding, and people want their money.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
So what's the argument that you make for people who express some sort of hesitancy about allowing that?
That if we are serious about educating students in the state of Connecticut, and we're serious about school choice, all students, regardless of what public school they attend, deserve an equitably funded education.
How do you think it would change Jumoke Academy, where your daughter went and graduated successfully from?
I think that it would make a significant difference in the amount of time that we spend as a charter school trying to raise money to continue our existing programs and to put in place new programs for our students. A lot of time is spent by parents, teachers, administrators, the community in raising funds in order to run your school effectively.
But you have had, you all before the show were telling me you've had great successes there.
Absolutely.
Talk to me about the ground that you've made up.
When we initially started 15 years ago, we were, as we do everything by lottery to engage to have students come to Jumoke, we were a failing school.
And I think we have some video of Jumoke that we can show people.
For the first 2 or 3 years. And we really had to institute curriculum and structure and really involve the parents and the community to get turned around. And now we're one of the top performing elementary and middle schools in the state.
Liz, talk about how you think increased funding and getting more funding from the state might change the day-to-day operations at your school.
I think it would change the day-to-day operations significantly. Number one, we would be able to pay our teachers fairly, to give them the increases that they deserve and have not had for several years. But it also it would allow us to offer the kinds of classes that need to be offered so that all students can receive the best education that they could receive, the programs that they need. As a small charter school, we have 165 students. We know well what they need. And it's painful sometimes to know so well and just not have the funding to be able to enact.
Couldn't some people say, well, you talked about success, you're having great success that way. Maybe our first priority, though, should be concentrating on fixing the schools, the majority schools that are out there and the achievement gaps in those communities.
I think that, well, I know as a parent, I truly believe that the ability to have a choice based upon your assessment of what your child needs is critical, and not every child fits into a traditional public school mode, but that should not be a deterrent in allowing them to receive as much funding as a child who goes to a traditional public school. So, it all goes back to choice. And as a parent, you have to make the best choice for your child. What
was it specifically that worked so well for your daughter, who's now set to graduate from college next month?
I think this sense of community. Jumoke Academy, Jumoke stands for Everybody Loves a Child. That's what Jumoke means. And so the mission of the school was to not only have students excel from an educational standpoint, but to also have children excel from a social, to create a well-rounded child. So that definitely appealed to me. The small classroom structure, the uniforms, the structure around educating a child really appealed to me, and it worked for her.
Another argument that people make is that charter schools kind of have the cream of the crop of students, that families who are, who have enough initiative to say, I want an alternative choice for my student, perhaps have students who are going to succeed. And how do you counter that argument?
Well, charters are required by law to have a fair means of admitting students. And I can say in the case of Common Ground and Jumoke, we use an outside, 70% of our students come from New Haven, and we use an outside lottery and are completely removed from that process. So those students come to us that way. Our out-of-district students go through a suburban lottery that we hold, but we admit all of our suburban applicants, almost all of our suburban applicants. So I think the whole notion of selecting these students selectively, I mean, it's complicated. We need to look at statistics over time and not just a single year, especially when you're looking at a very small school. And you need to look at what kind of school it is, an elementary, a middle school, a high school. That's an important factor as well.
We only have about 30 seconds left, but I'm curious to know what your hopes are that you might get accomplished this session. What do you think might come out of the Capitol?
That they really do look at the successes of charter schools overall in the state of Connecticut and decide to make the funding more equitable between traditional and charter school.
Do you think it's going to happen?
I have hope. I have hope. I hope that educators are able to see children in the middle, that legislators are able to see the children in the middle of the room and put them first and do what is best for children, which is fund public school education, all public schools, all public school children equitably.
All right, well, we'll be watching. Thanks both of you for coming and sharing your perspective. Thanks very much. Supreme Court justices are debating the constitutionality of the health reform law. We'll look at what they have to weigh. That's coming up next.